By the time my phone finally lit up on that silent porch, the turkey was cold, my hands were shaking, and the wire transfer funding my son-in-law's dream had already been canceled. I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from so I can see how far my story has reached. I am Liddy Hart, 69 this past April, and I drove 16 hours in one stretch to be on time. The map said 15 if traffic behaved. Traffic didn't. Neither did the weather, nor the ache in my right hip that wakes like an old cat when the rain starts. Still, I packed my little hatchback with everything a grandmother might bring to make Thanksgiving taste like home: 2 pumpkin pies, 1 pecan, a pan of cornbread dressing under foil, my grandmother's cranberry relish in a mason jar with a gingham lid, and a turkey rubbed with herbs and butter so rich it shone like burnished bronze. I rented the house months ago. A pretty farmhouse with a deep front porch, white railings, and the kind of swing you see in catalogs. The pictures had shown golden light on polished floors, a long table that could seat 12, and a fireplace with stacked birch logs already waiting their turn. I had pictured my 3 children around that table, their spouses, and my 6 grandchildren tumbling in like birds. I had pictured the noise, the chaos, and for once, my empty house back in Arlington not echoing me right back at myself. 16 hours is a long time to make promises to yourself. Somewhere in West Virginia, I promised I would not correct my daughter's recipe methods. In Pennsylvania, I promised I would laugh when my son-in-law tried to carve. At the state line, I promised I would not bring up money. Not even to ask about the papers I had been asked to sign on Monday for a sizable investment in my daughter's husband's new business. Not over pie. Not over coffee. Not at all. The business had been the summer's vocabulary word: venture, burn rate, runway, seed, angel. I'm old, not foolish. I asked for numbers. He brought decks and jargon. I asked for collateral. He offered me bright eyes and enthusiasm. What tipped me wasn't his pitch, it was my daughter's hands, knotted and hopeful, and the way she said, "Mom, this would take so much pressure off us." So I said yes, then built a parachute from caution, escrow, a no-fault rescission window until funds were released, and a clause that I, as silent partner, could withdraw before close if a material change in family circumstance appeared. 2 days before Thanksgiving was the signing. "Let's just wait until after the holiday," I had said. "We'll do it Monday." The wire was scheduled for 9 a.m. The money I'd saved over decades, teaching, then tutoring, then flipping a little starter home I kept sweeping and painting with stubborn loyalty, would shudder into a dream I wasn't sure I believed in. I told myself trust is an investment too. The farmhouse was darker than the photos. The kind of country dark that swallows the edges of things. The porch light didn't flick on, though I knocked the way polite people do when they open a door that is supposed to be theirs. The code the rental company sent worked. The lock clicked green and the smell of fresh paint and pine cleaner greeted me. I set the pies on the counter. I opened the fridge to slide in the turkey. I closed the fridge because it was empty and my hands were suddenly not steady enough to hold a pan. "Hello." I called into the rooms, automatic as a reflex in a life where people answer. No reply came back, only my voice, older than I remember, bouncing off the living room's blank white. I checked the bedrooms. The beds were made, hospital corners sharp. No suitcases. No toys. No jackets thrown careless on chairs. I checked my phone. The group chat that had bloomed with emojis the week I sent the house link now sat silent as a held breath. I opened the rental's welcome binder and found the Wi-Fi password. I sent a polite message, "Here safe." Driving took longer than planned. "See you soon." The 3 typing dots arrived under my daughter's name, then vanished. Minutes passed. I unpacked the groceries I'd brought, grateful for the busy hands. I tried again. "I'll get the turkey in the oven. Text when you're close." The porch swing creaked when I sat. The night smelled like wet leaves and distant wood smoke. The farmhouse sat far enough from town that the sky showed its real face. I counted stars until I lost count. When the quiet began to press, I thumbed through pictures on my phone of my grandkids in Halloween costumes, my son-in-law's grin at the groundbreaking of a warehouse he planned to convert, My daughter's face tilted to sunlight, looking 16 again for a blink. My phone finally buzzed. A calendar alert. Thanksgiving menu ideas remind me. I laughed a dry little laugh. Then the screen lit again, but it wasn't my daughter. It was Chase Bank. At first, I told myself there had been an emergency. A delay. A wrong turn. Then I phoned. My calls went to voicemail. I texted again. No bubbles. I called the other two, my eldest, Miles, who measures time in workouts and deal flow, and my youngest, Erin, who reads the weather 1,000 ways on her morning runs. Both sent me to recorded greetings I could recite by heart. Nothing ruins a kitchen faster than loneliness. I preheated the oven anyway, because the turkey had to get in. Busy people get fed, fed people forgive. I chopped onion and celery with swift, practiced hands. I set a pot to simmer, the smell of sage and butter lifting something in my chest that felt close to tears and far from it. By the time the breast registered 165 on my thermometer, the mantel clock read 10:12 p.m. The porch light still refused to work. I carried a plate outside and ate on the top step like a tenant in my own life. The wind shivered the oak leaves. And all answered some small thing's last mistake in the field. The first call came at 10:33. Not my children. The number was local but unfamiliar. The voice was a woman's, young and bright with the kind of cheer polite people mistake for kindness. Mrs. Hart? This is Trina with Stone and Moss Cowork. I'm confirming the Monday morning notary for the convertible note. Still good for 9 sharp at our downtown suite? I looked at the plate on my lap, the smear of cranberry on the white, my fork laid crosswise like I'd set it down in a restaurant to see the bathroom. I looked at the empty driveway that reflected my headlights back at me earlier when I'd pulled in alone. Trina, I said, slow enough to taste each syllable, does that office have coffee? Oh yes, ma'am. Cold brew on tap, tea, seltzers, the works. Then I'll see you at 9 with a surprise. I slept on the couch because the master felt like stealing. At 2:08 a.m., the motion sensor light flickered and my head snapped up like a dog's. It was only a stray cat, pale as a cake from the bakery across town I'd already found on Google, threading the porch and slipping between rails. At 4:46 a.m., a message arrived from Erin. Mom, I am so sorry we changed plans last minute. Zach's parents invited us to Vermont, and the kids were so excited about snow, and we left before I saw your last message, and then my phone died, and it was a whole thing. I thought Miles told you. Please don't be upset. We'll FaceTime in the morning before sledding. Love you. There are 2 ways a message like that can sit in a person. It can bruise and be rubbed lightly and move on. Or it can light a fuse that burns slow to the heart. I put down the phone. I watched the light climb the wall. And then I wrote instead of replied. Erin, safe travels. Have a lovely time. Give the kids a kiss from me. I didn't say, you forgot. I didn't say, I drove 16 hours and my hands ache and the turkey is already carved. I didn't say, I run at a house where there is no one to say grace but me. At 5:02, Miles texted. Mom, last minute invite to Maui from a client. Couldn't pass it up. I owe you a call. Love you. Rain check? I put the phone on the counter like it was hot. Later, my daughter's husband, Ian, sent a sparkle-laden salad of words that did not belong to a grown man on Thanksgiving. We're at my cousin's cabin. Totally last minute. No service up here. Can't wait to toast with you Monday at the signing. This is going to change everything for us. The first light broke over the field. The farmhouse showed itself, tidy, hopeful, expectant. I made coffee strong enough to stand a spoon, poured half into a thermos, and packed up the pies, the extra turkey, the cornbread, the rolls, the jar of cranberry like a ruby in my tote. I left a note for the housekeeper with a tip under it that might have paid a week's rent for someone else. Thank you for this good house. Town was only 10 minutes of Tulane and a stand of fur. I parked by the only diner with steam fogging the windows and went inside to ask, who's stranded and hungry? It's a question that always pays better than it costs. By 8, I had 2 college kids whose bus had broken down, a trucker with a tired face and kind eyes who needed something that wasn't from a gas station, and a young couple with a baby whose Airbnb had canceled at check-in because of a burst pipe. We drove back in a caravan that looked like a parade someone forgot to organize. The baby squealed at the cat who had taken up residence under the porch swing. The college kids lit the fire the way their fathers probably taught them. The trucker carved with reverence. I laid out the food like a hymn. We said grace. It was not the grace I had imagined saying, with my grandchildren passing peas and my children feigning patience as I told stories they've already heard. But it was grace. Bread broke. Steam rose. Laughter found the rafters. The farmhouse woke to itself. When the baby napped, I stepped onto the porch with my phone and dialed my bank. A human came on the line, and her voice had that careful warmth that means a script is in front of her. "How may I assist you today, Ms. Hart?" "You can help me exercise a rescission clause," I said, and watched the oak leaves flash silver in the wind like a school of fish. "And you can help me change a guest list." At 9 sharp, my daughter, my son-in-law, and I stepped through the glass doors of stone and moss co-work. The lobby smelled like eucalyptus. There were succulents arranged on a shelf like a still life that doesn't know it's being painted. A barista offered a menu printed on thick paper with a sans serif font that made my teeth hurt. Ian wore his bright future smile and a blazer that had never met a wrinkle. My daughter, Jenna, had worry pulled tight across her forehead like a headband that pinches, and when she hugged me, the bones of her shoulders felt wrong in my arms. "Mom," she whispered into my collar. "Please be on your best behavior." I kissed her cheek. "Always." Trina waved us to a glass cube with a long table, 4 chairs, and a discreet little tray of cookies that tasted like a bakery's good intentions. The notary arrived with a leather folio and the important gravity of someone who has never once broken a rule. Ian launched into his music. "It's not just a warehouse, Liddy. It's an ecosystem. Artisans, coffee roasters, micro-retail, a podcast stage, a kids' makerspace. It's community. You're not just investing money, you're investing in a future." I set my thermos on the table. I set the tote beside me, its weight a quiet reminder that food is proof of care. The notary laid out the pages. Convertible note. Valuation cap. Discount. Rights. Covenants. Signature here, here, and here, she said. I lifted the pen. I wrote my name once, deliberately. Then I clicked the pen closed. Before I signed the remaining pages, I said, "I need to declare a material change in family circumstance." Jenna blinked. Ian laughed a little laugh that told anyone listening he had never once been denied what he wanted. "What circumstance is that?" he asked. I opened my phone and put it on the table, face up. 3 screenshots waited there. Aaron's message, Miles's, and Ian's own bonfire of punctuation from his cousin's cabin. "I rented a house for this family to gather, and none of you came. You didn't call me before you left. You didn't make a new plan. You forgot me. Silence is not empty. It has weight." The room filled with it as surely as if water had been pouring from the ceiling vent. "Mom," Jenna said, color rising in her cheeks. "You're making this about a misunderstanding." "No," I said. "I am making it about priority." I slid a paper across the glass, the rescission notice I had signed at dawn on Friday, notarized by the notary at the little post office who comes in early for people like me who have taught her grandchildren to read. The notary in the room picked up the paper, read, and then looked at Ian with the unwavering neutrality of an umpire. "This supersedes our meeting," she said gently. "Without this signer, there is no signing." Ian sat back like someone had pulled his chair an inch too far, and he hadn't calculated for it. "You can't be serious." "I am," I said. "Also, I have a new use for the funds." Jenna followed me out into the alley, where the dumpsters were painted a cheerier green than dumpsters deserve. The smell of coffee and warmed sugar from the lobby laced the cold air. She caught my sleeve the way she did when she was a child and thunder scared her at night. "Mom, please," she whispered. "You know we need this. Ian's already put down deposits. We've told the contractors." Monday was supposed to be the start. "I know what Monday was supposed to be," I said. "I also know what Thursday was supposed to be." Tears made her eyes bright as marbles. I wanted to gather her into my coat and tuck her in like you do a child after a bad dream. But the dream wasn't mine to end. She had chosen it. "What do you want me to say?" she asked. "We tried. We're busy. We didn't want you to have to cook." We thought. You thought I would be understanding, I said. Which is to say, you thought I would be silent. She folded. Not all at once, but the way a bridge does when a load it was never meant to bear finally bears down. I am so sorry, she said. I am. Let me fix it. I am giving you a chance to, I said, and took the folded packet from my tote. These are my terms. She glanced at the cover sheet. Terms? Of love, I said. Because money is easy to count. Attention isn't. The document was short. 1. Sunday dinners twice a month, no phones at the table. If you cancel, you must propose a new date within the week. 2. Birthdays are non-negotiable attendance unless you are contagious. The person celebrates, not the calendar, so we make them feel celebrated. 3. We choose one holiday each year that is mine to host. You arrive when you say you will. If you say you cannot, you tell me the day you know it, not the day of. 4. If there is a change in circumstance that affects our plans, you call. Texting is what people do with acquaintances. We are not acquaintances. 5. We give what we can to those who have less, as a family. Once a quarter, we show up somewhere together where our hands are needed. At the end is a page where you can add your own, I said. Because love is mutual, not dictated. She flipped the pages. And if we sign this? Then we revisit the business in 6 months, I said. I will not be your investor until I am your mother again. Her breath left her. She looked back at the glass doors like they might swing open and her husband might save her from this conversation. They didn't. He didn't. Do you know what he'll say? She asked, small. Yes, I said. He will say I am unfair. He will say I have no vision. He will say I am withholding. And I will say I am precise. I do not enjoy ultimatums. I like plans, charts, a casserole pulled from the oven at exactly 6 p.m., the way the recipe says. But there comes a time in any life where a person must declare what hurts and what heals. On Tuesday, I called a family meeting. There is power in calling things what they are. I booked the back room at Mateo's, the Mexican place with murals across the walls and a waitress who calls me Miss L, making me feel like a woman with a secret. I told my children to come, and I told them if they didn't, I would understand they were making a choice I would honor by stepping back. They came. Miles arrived in a suit that said he had somewhere more important to be after. He hugged me distractedly and immediately checked a market app. Erin came flushed from a run, hair damp under a cap, guilt already gathered in her posture like a child's shadow behind her. Jenna arrived last, alone, eyes thick with a week's worth of sleeps that had not done their job. The waitress set down chips and salsa and tapped my shoulder. You want me to block this booth from the rest for an hour? She whispered. We can say it's reserved. Thank you, I said, and slipped her a tip like they do in the movies when people want a piano player to play another song. We ordered food so we'd have something to do with our hands when our mouths got tired. Then I laid the packet on the table. Miles tapped the cover. What is this, Mom? An invitation, I said. With rules. Erin read page 1 and burst into tears. Miles made a scoffing sound like an office chair rolling back. Jenna sat very still. On Thursday, I said, I ate my Thanksgiving on a porch alone. On Friday, I fed strangers at the table I rented for you. On Monday, I canceled money you haven't earned because you haven't kept what matters. Mom, Miles said, leaning forward like every negotiation posture book teaches. You're emotional. You're conflating two things. Business is business. Family is. Family is business, I said. The oldest one there is. He sank back. Erin wiped her face with the napkin Mateo's gives you that looks like it could double as a tiny tablecloth. I messed up, she said. I did. I can blame the kids being excited about snow, but I could have told them that Grandma was waiting in a house she paid for. I could have gotten in the car and driven 4 hours south instead of north. Thank you, I said simply. We went point by point. It sounds clinical when I write it, but the conversation wasn't. It was messy and part old grief and part new resolve. We talked about my husband, gone 10 years now, and how I had done what I could to keep the center of our family from blowing away like a napkin in wind. We talked about the slow creep of convenience over consideration. We talked about calendars and people and how the second should always lead the first. By dessert, Erin had signed. Jenna signed with hands that shook. Miles stared at the page as if the letters might rearrange to something he preferred, then signed too, his name quick, annoyed, genuine. Now, I said, folding the signed packet back into my tote, we need to go shopping. Shopping? Miles said, as if the word were in a language not taught at his gym. For groceries, I said. We miss Thanksgiving. We can make a Saturday that tastes like one. We pushed 3 carts through the market like a circus act. Miles avoided the center aisles like they were beneath him, which is to say he finally learned a thing I spent 2 years teaching him when he was 13 and a bottomless pit. Aaron debated yams versus sweet potatoes like a scientist, then bought both. Jenna selected a turkey with the care people choose a dress for a wedding. We filled the carts: greens, potatoes, carrots, a ham for good measure, oranges, apples, cranberries, real butter, good cream. At my house, we cooked. Nothing cures like doing the next right thing with your hands. The kitchen fogged and sang, and when the doorbell rang, the first guest list began to arrive. The trucker from Thursday, the college kids, the young couple with their baby. The rental house cleaner I'd left the note for who cried when I pressed a container of leftovers into her hands, and, late, careful, nervous, my daughter's husband, Ian. He stood on my porch like a salesman who knows the homeowner is home and is deciding whether to open the door. May I come in? He asked, almost soft. You may, I said. If you can hold a gravy boat and a tongue at the same time. He nodded, relief and something like respect moving across his face. He took the boat. He held the tongue. 2 weeks later, Ian's warehouse dream hit its first wall. A contractor pulled out, blaming financing. A city inspector raised an eyebrow at the phrase podcast stage and asked for additional permits no one had expected. The angel investor who had promised a secondary round placed a polite, decisive hold on his enthusiasm when Ian admitted a silent partner had withdrawn. It takes only one person to change the weather when everyone else is watching the flag. He called me on a Wednesday, not a holiday. I was at the community center sorting canned goods into categories: soup, fruit, peanut butter if we were lucky, box things with cheerful fonts if we weren't. I know you said 6 months, he said. But could we talk sooner? About the business? I asked. About me, he said. And how much of me is in the business? I set the can of pears down and leaned against the table. Come by on Saturday. Bring your shoes you don't mind scuffing. We'll start in the garage. He arrived in sneakers so white you could see the line where the shoelaces shadowed the tongue. Should I have brought work gloves? He asked, trying to make it a joke. I handed him a box cutter and pointed at the stack of things I had been meaning to sort since my husband passed: old tools, gardening gear, a box of light fixtures from when I thought I might do something daring with the hallway. We arranged. We labeled. He found he was good at fitting like with like. It is a talent most businesses cannot teach. Somewhere between the rake and the third strand of Christmas lights, he said, I have not been good to your daughter. I know, I said. But I like that you know too. He told me about the late nights, the grand plans, the feeling that success required the sacrifice of every small human thing at its altar. He told me about the narrative he fed himself that someday he would make it up to Jenna, to the kids, to me, to himself. He said someday like a person says a country they've never visited and can't afford. When you canceled, he said, I was furious in a way that felt like hunger. But then you fed strangers. And I realized the difference between someone who wants to be a pillar and someone who is one. I am also stubborn, I said. And I don't like being sidelined by people who think I don't know the shape of a thing. He smiled, a small, honest curve. Noted. Money is not love. It is a lever. In December, I pulled 3 smaller ones. First, I opened a scholarship fund in my late husband's name for students in our district who had been raised by grandparents. The first award would be given the week of graduation. The application asked for an essay titled, The Table I Miss and the Table I Will Build. Second, I bought 2 industrial sewing machines for the community center's job skills room. That Saturday, Erin, who runs more miles than most people walk in a week, stayed to teach a cardio class for seniors who needed someone to say, we can do this together. She cried in the parking lot after, then laughed at herself and cried again and said, Happy tears, Mom, I promise, in a voice steadier than it had been in months. Third, I did what I told Ian I'd consider if the terms were met. I funded a pilot. Not the whole dream, just enough runway to see if it could lift. We drew a boundary I could like, the first floor only, with 3 tenants already signed and paying deposit, each month's progress tied to next month's release. The largest wall in the space would hold a mural of a table. Anyone who walked in would know what kind of building their feet had entered. We did the holiday at my house. The tree leaned because old trees in old houses do, and I did not fix it because imperfection is honest. We cooked together, which is what Thanksgiving had owed us and did not pay on time. There was forgiveness in the gravy, slow and low, stirred by every hand in turn. There was apology in the way Miles washed pans without looking at his phone. There was repair in the way Jenna put her head on my shoulder when the dishes were done and we stood in the quiet living room, looking at the lights breathing in their small electric way. Ian took me aside before dessert. He handed me a paper bag with the rolled top the bakery uses when you buy more than you should. "What is this?" I asked. He smiled. "Proof of life." Inside, a frame. In it, a copy of my rescission form, notarized, stamped, final. Under it, his own signature on a new document. Family covenant. It read at the top in a font I immediately liked. The first line was mine. "We sit at the table we say we will." Under it, lines written by my children, not by me. "Miles, we do not outsource our attention to our calendars." "Aaron, we show up on purpose." "Jenna, we say we're sorry like it matters because it does." "Ian, we build spaces where people are fed without being measured first." I am not a person who cries easily in front of other people. I cried then. January brought snow, the kind that remembers how to surprise a city. We shoveled the path to the warehouse together. Me, Ian, 3 tenants with hats that said their trades clay, ink, beans, and a handful of volunteers who had seen the call on the community board. Jenna, now managed with the zeal of a person who has learned white space, can be a kind of sentence worth reading. The soft open was a soft success. Children put their hands into wet clay and came out grinning like they'd made a moon. A barista pulled shots that tasted like the high note in a favorite song. A printmaker whispered to me, "I haven't had a space like this since art school," and I whispered back, "Welcome home," and we both nodded like we had agreed to keep a place from the weather together. Miles came, wearing a sweater without a logo. He stood by the mural and looked at the table, long and generous, with people painted around it whose faces were not detailed intentionally, so anyone could see themselves there. "I see it now," he said, almost to himself. "What?" I asked. "That our family is a company with a product," he said. "And the product is how we make people feel when they're with us. We have been underperforming." I laughed and, for once, didn't mind his language. "Quarterly targets are up," I said. He laughed too. In February, I received a voicemail from a woman I did not know but recognized anyway. Polite people do this. They introduce themselves with a love letter made of credentials. "Hi, Ms. Hart, my name is Annika. I'm an assistant producer for a show that features community projects making a difference. We heard about your warehouse. We'd love to film a segment." I played it for the family over Sunday stew. Miles said, "Of course they called." Aaron said, "Only if we can mic the seniors' cardio class," and winked at me. Jenna said nothing at first, then said, "I'm proud of you," which is a sentence children think parents don't need and parents need just as much as any other human being. We said yes. The segment came out in March. The camera caught the light on the mural, the steam curling from the coffee, the way clay gives under hands, the way laughter reads on the face like hope you can rewind and watch again. My part was 15 seconds where I said, I canceled an investment to make a different one, and the internet did what it always does. Some people clapped, some people clucked. People I did not know sent letters with handwriting that looked like my 4th graders had when they were still allowed to focus on neatness. I put the letters in a box labeled "Keep for Rainy Days." We did an egg hunt at the warehouse because community spaces are meant to hold the good and the simple. The little kids ran in circles. The big kids pretended not to care and then cared deeply when a golden egg emerged from under a potted fern. The seniors hid in plain sight and laughed when the children didn't see them, which is a metaphor I did not plan and will keep anyway. Halfway through the morning, a man approached me. He had the look of someone who has carried a secret too long and would like to set it down. He said, "My mom watched your segment and called me." He said, "We haven't spoken in 2 years." He said, "We had dinner last night." I took his hand briefly. We stood and watched a child crack an egg open as if the world might fall out of it. May brought a graduation and a table not at my house. We did it at Jenna's. She called her sister for menu planning and figured out she likes spreadsheets when they are about food. She called her brother for budgeting, and he pretended to be annoyed and secretly loved being asked. Ian built a kid's fort in the backyard and a bench big enough for 4 grown UPS to sit and argue kindly about which pie is better. As evening folded in, Jenna brought out place cards. The names were ordinary and holy. Family. The cleaner whose kindness steadied me that first lonely night. The trucker who now parked his rig 2 blocks away to try the coffee and tell whoever would listen that this town had something people needed to see. The college kids, now volunteers every Saturday. The man who'd told me about calling his mother. 3 seniors from Aaron's class who move slowly and fast at the same time because presence works like that when you practice it long enough. We passed bowls and stories. We said thank you for showing up, and also I'm sorry it took me a while. The stars came out on time. A breeze lifted the edge of the tablecloth and laid it right back down like a mother's hand. If you've ever kept bees, you know the sound they make when you have done a thing right. Steady, satisfied, not frantic. The warehouse sounded like that. The mural glowed. The coffee tasted like somebody had paid attention to every step. In the corner, a woman read to a dozen kids from a stack of picture books the center had bought with the proceeds from the soft open. She did the voices. One boy wore a cape he refused to remove even when it tangled around his ankles. His mother let him be heroic anyway. Ian approached with a clipboard. He now carried clipboards like a man who understands that paper is not a burden, it is a plan you can hold. "We're in the black this month," he said. "Barely, but it counts." I pretended to examine the numbers. I had already memorized them. "You like this feeling?" I asked. "I like that it came from something we did right," he said. "Not something we told ourselves we'd make up for later." "Good," I said. "Then you'll like the next thing." He raised an eyebrow. "It is a little gift to keep a son-in-law slightly off balance when you can." "I found the property next door," I said. "It's a mess. And perfect." He laughed with a relief I recognized. "You're dangerous." "I am 70 this year," I said. "Dangerous is just another word for awake." Here is the part most stories skip, the quiet consequences. There were still weeks when Sunday dinner was hard to schedule because life is a hungry, disorganized dog. There were texts that arrived when calls should have. There were nights I cooked for 6 and 2 came, and nights I set 4 plates and 10 showed up all at once with arms full of chaos and apologies. There were moments I wanted to pick up the rescission clause of my love and wave it like a flag. I did not. We recommitted instead. We adjusted. We remembered why. Miles replaced rain check with Thursday at 7, "Can I bring dessert?" Aaron learned that Vermont snow is exactly as exciting the weekend after Thanksgiving as the weekend of it, and that you can teach kids to enjoy waiting for a thing when you model it with your face. Jenna started a spreadsheet titled Tables, Borrowed, Shared, Built. It listed people we could call when someone got sick and a meal was needed, movers when a couch had to get across town, a babysitter who understood that bedtime is a promise, not an appointment. A year from the empty house, we rented the farmhouse again. This time, the porch light came on before I could reach for the switch because Ian and Jenna had arrived early to replace the bulb. The beds held suitcases. The kitchen hummed at 4 p.m., the way a kitchen should. The cat was there again, a year older, fat from the attention of people who learn the shape of kindness and practice it on whatever animal wanders near. We set the table long and generous. When we said grace, we named by name the people who had sat with us when we were strangers to one another and decided to be otherwise. We named the way hunger shows up disguised as busyness. We named the way you can feed it without letting it drive. After dinner, the children put on a play they wrote about a woman who canceled a business deal and started a different one. In the play, the villain was a calendar that ate people. The hero was a table. The costumes were inaccurate and perfect. My phone lit on the porch the way it had the year before, but the message on it was my own draft in the Notes app, words I'd written the night I ate turkey on the step by myself. I will not be invisible in the house I built. I looked through the window at my family. Miles handed a plate to the trucker. Aaron folded a blanket around a napping baby like a blessing. Jenna and Ian stood with their heads together, making a list. I could tell from the way their hands moved of what would be needed tomorrow to make today last. I did not delete the note. I did not need it. I kept it anyway. Some sentences save a life in the quiet. You keep them the way you keep matches in a drawer even when the power works just fine. People ask me if canceling the investment was cruel. It was precise. People ask me if it fixed everything. It did not. But it changed the shape of what we fix. On the wall by my front door, there is a frame with two documents, the rescission and the covenant. Below them hangs a photo from the second guest list Thanksgiving, the one where strangers became ours. In the picture, a baby reaches for the cat, and the cat endures it with dignity. In the corner, you can see a pie no one cut yet because we were full and decided to wait until later. There is a lesson even in that. You do not have to have everything now. If you drove 16 hours for a house with no one in it, I am sorry. If you stayed, cooked anyway, fed whoever showed up, and called your bank on Monday, I am proud of you. If you needed to write your own terms of love, I hope your people sign them and mean it. And if they do not, I hope you build a table somewhere else and fill it the way you deserve. We are all, in the end, investors. We choose where to place what we cannot get back. Time, care, quiet attention. I placed mine where I could see the return. It looked like a table full of people, none of them perfect, all of them hungry, all of us learning to show up before the food gets cold.
So, another story of my grandmother has end, and be clicking here, you will have when more such stories.